Hello YouTube, iFixItAll here, Team iFixItAll. Today we're working on a 1970 Volkswagen Karmann Ghia Turn Signal switch. This might look like yours from, I'm not really sure what years this particular style went through. The purpose of this is while I was working on my steering column, troubleshooting, this assembly needed to be taken out by way of 4 bolts in the 4 corners here. And you can see that right there, there, and there. This is the whole assembly, and one part that fell out that I still can't determine where it goes is this. This right here. I'm trying to figure out where that fits in that puzzle. So I've put this puzzle back together. There's one common rivet right in the center back here. When you unbolt the turn signal switch, it'll have a tendency to open up like a sandwich. Well, there's a lot of stuff going on right in here. Springs, slider clips, and a big ball bearing. What I have here is I have this thing assembled with zip ties and string so that I can open this up and show anyone in the future what this thing looks like on the insides. Notice there's 5 conductors here. Mine all were hardwired through the harness, so the ends are right here, but they're all color coded. You just have one particular pair of wires that are identical, and that's your no, that one's solid brown and this one's a brown white. There's your horn contacts right in there. This assembly here gets trapped by 2 screws, 2 mounting screws. Your horn contacts are just simple 2 metal blades that when you pull the handle forward, the back contact makes contact with the front one. So, but anyway, the purpose of this video is just if someone has a problem where they have a part that fell out, where does it go? Again, trying to figure out where this part goes. This little part that looks like that. I don't know where it goes yet. I mentioned earlier that this whole assembly has a single rivet right here. You can't you can take it apart if you want to, like I did. I undid the rivet. I used side cutters or dikes to work the knurl of that rivet. I'm going to remove the horn contacts right now. I'm going to get them out of the way. Here we go. And there you have it. There's your horn contact. It's just 2 simple metal contacts that get squished together. So it goes beep beep. I'm going to set this aside. And this should be brown, white, and brown. Now we're down to this assembly. Here's the single rivet I was talking about. Right here. And right here is a little washer that was over top of that rivet. Right there. And I'm calling it a rivet because that's what it acts like. It's back here. It's a long stud, about this long. I'm going to be pulling that out. There's a spring. So the pin is right here. Get out of the way, wire. Damn. Alright. The pin is right there, and it passes all the way through and comes around to here. And that little washer that I was speaking about, which is living right here right now, was slipped over that pin, and then the pin was knurled over the washer. So what I did was I took side cutters and I unknurled the rivet and was able to punch the pin through and keep the washer back here. I'm going to start taking this thing apart to show you what all's in here, because it's kind of tricky. Right here, careful, there's a big ball bearing right here. I'm going to release the bearing first, this BB, so to speak. I'll cut my zip tie now. Open this up. It's probably going to try to open on its own. And there's the BB. It shot out. I'd like to do that in slow motion. Lucky I didn't lose it. There's the ball bearing. I'll lay these parts out over here in order. Again, this guy, I don't know where it goes. There's the washer that's on top of that pivot pin, the mounting pin for the handle, the pivot pin. There's a ball bearing. Now I'm going to cut this zip tie back here so I can finish taking things apart to show you how things are assembled. Okay. There's a pin right there, that pin I was speaking about. And there's that big tall spring in there. I'll get that spring out. Keep the spring with the pin. And lay it with the washer. If you're lucky, you can reuse that pin and that washer and re-flare the end of the pin out if you use a really nice pair of flush cut dikes to roll that metal back up. But you could also fabric cobble a panhead bolt and maybe a nut. There's a lot of clearance around this thing, so it should be fine. Use a little Loctite on your nut. So this is the lower contact assembly. There's nothing left here to lose. you'll see 6 contacts here, but you'll see 3 conductors tied to this area. That's because I looked real close and it looks like these 3 tabs are jumpered forward. This one is jumpered forward. This one's jumpered forward. I guess I want to call this like the holder assembly for all that garbage. I'll set this aside because this is where it gets interesting. Let me see what I can do here to make this look right. Just for the sake of assembly, I want to put things back where they're supposed to be. Alright. Right there you're looking at the bottom of the turn signal assembly. And you'll see 2 little magical strips here, but they're tied with string. The reason why I have them tied with string is because underneath them is underneath each tab there's a little tiny spring right in here. See the little dimple on the metal tab right there? That's dimpled because it's favoring a little coil spring underneath here. There's 4 springs. These tabs just float under the tension of the assembled unit. These tabs are just floating and they are rubbing these contacts here, which are your wired terminals. The turn signal assembly is just floating. I mean, the tabs are just floating. But you had that ball bearing in the end. Oh yeah, that ball bearing we took out, it's spring loaded. So, with the ball bearing, I will put its associated spring. Here it comes. Pretty decent sized one. So, let's take a look at these floating contacts back here. They're moving again. I'm just going to cut the string so you can see what's going on here. Maybe not. Hang on. Let me try to fix something. There we go. Got that. I've got a string right here holding these floating contacts. I'm going to cut that string now so that you can see what's inside, what all's going on there. When I loosened my turn signal switch assembly, half the unit kind of expanded and some of these things here fell out to include my large ball bearing here. And I was left with no other choice but to either see if I can reassemble this or just buy a new one. I looked on the internet and I discovered no one's... Maybe there's a video. I looked really hard. I used all kinds of search words, so I'm doing a video on it. Let me get something to cut with. So watch this. Some better light here. Check this out. There's a contact. It's just a sliding brass contact. Set that down over there. And there's another sliding brass contact. They're shaped like U shapes, but they're shaped that way because they point just like I'm showing you. Because inside the plastic, there's machined out areas for those little down tabs to fit into. How they're bent. I'll point that out with little jewelers. Each one has its own little groove it rests in, right here and here. And all this goobity guy you see here is, when I assemble this kind of stuff, sometimes I use heavy grease so that when I put my parts together I can flip it upside down, reassemble, and everything stays in place. Well, that's proving to be a challenge with this switch to reassemble it. Here is a tiny spring that I just extracted. I'm going to set that down over here because that's associated to the little sliding clips, the sliding contacts. There's another spring. Put that with the sliding contacts. There's another spring. All four of these are the same. One of my springs was bent, and it was also discolored under some heating conditions of some sorts. I'm thinking one of these springs had been malfunctioning for quite a long time. Didn't see any symptoms in the car with turn signal activity. Sometimes a chattering turn signal relay, and it might have been that spring. I don't know. So that empties out all of the critical little small parts that can fall out. That's what she looks like without the springs. The floating clips would just lay in their little under pressure, sandwich pressure. This is just assembled pressure. These contacts just set in their grooves with no springs. That's what they do. They just lay. I have no idea how the factory assembled these things. I have no idea. There's got to be a trick to it. And I got to thinking, well, I could reassemble this whole thing if I just cleaned everything with thinner or something that has a good evaporation rate. If I just dropped each spring into its hole and add a drop of super glue, add a drop of super glue, add a spring, super glue, spring, super glue, spring, spring, and then super glue my sliding contacts on top of the springs, super glue those, and then I can move this thing around as much as I want and lay that in this assembly here and reassemble everything super glued. And then once I mounted it in the car, the activity of me actuating the handle and such would break the super glue connections, and the physical friction of my sliding contacts rubbing against my wired terminal block section would activate the circuit. But of course, after the super glue dries, I would have to add a little bit of grease on these contacts too. And I guess a lot of people are probably wondering, why bother? Well, this is like an original switch. There's another spring right here we're going to remove because there's more moving parts. You never know. This gizmo may come loose on you. I'll get to the point I was trying to make earlier. That comes off like so. And you have released the plate, whatever the hell this is, guide plate. And then that spring was keeping these two sliders pulled inward. I can't really tell what purpose they serve, but they do something. I haven't had the switch assembled in a manner where I can actually function it to study what the hell these are doing. But these are coming out. I'm going to lay them to their associated spring, taking note of which direction they are installed in, because they will go in both ways. This is kind of important. I should note this for you, show you. That's the way they go in. The little notched section of each tooth point outboard. Because watch, this thing can be installed this way. And you'll be like, what the hell? So, take pictures beforehand maybe. I didn't because I remembered where stuff goes, but what my situation was I saw how the switch was assembled, but then I looked on the floor and I found one of these, a little spring. I found a slider clip and the ball bearing. And I wondered to myself, where did that come from? We're restoring the whole car, so there's a lot of things in my floorboard right now for the wife, and I wasn't 100% sure if this was parts out of the switch or not, but after I started looking at the switch while it was still partially installed, I started noticing, well, that clip looks like another clip. Yeah, these parts fell out, so I got to figure out where they go. This comes off as well. Oh, we don't even need that no more. But I noticed it will install in both spots. Yeah, you got to be careful. You cannot install that in the wrong. You install in those two holes. Out with these clips. And again, I do not know where this goes. And I've studied and studied and studied, and I can't figure out where this goes yet. Again, the purpose of this video was for someone who had parts fall out of their turn signal switch and they did not know where they went, where they go. They don't know where they go. Hopefully I was helpful. The purpose also is my attempting to reassemble is because this is an original part. It says made in Germany. Got the original part number on it. It's got some sort of stamp here that means something. Sierra Whiskey Fox SWF. And so if I can, I want to be able to repair and salvage this original item on the car. I think when I order a new turn signal switch, it comes with a new handle. Regretfully, I believe that's true, because I don't think the new handles are metal. I might be wrong. I would love to work on this some more and try to figure out how this finishes out and goes together so that I can reuse it, but at the end of the day, if it's not going to be reliable and dependable, maybe I can buy something that's OEM like or equivalent. Might have to pay some big bucks for it, I'm not real sure. But anyway, hope this video was helpful for anyone who's dinking with their Volkswagen, Karmann Ghia, maybe even a Beetle, their turn signal switch, and they see some of these parts laid out here, and they might be able to know where they go after that. Anyway, you guys have a great day. Thanks.